This time we'll hear from the public on agenda items. Madam Clerk, if you call our first speaker.
Thank you. Andrea Anderson.
Welcome, Ms. Anderson. We do have a 3-minute time limit, okay?
Great. Good evening. My name is Andrea Anderson. I'm the parent of a Virginia Beach Schools student who receives special education services. My son Trey has Down syndrome and he is intellectually disabled. He's now in 3rd grade and he attends his home school with his sisters. He's included in his regular classroom and he benefits greatly from the good examples around him and the high expectations set by his teachers and his IEP team. In addition, based on feedback from his general ed teacher and his IEP team, Trey's inclusion has benefited his typically developing peers as well. His classmates have learned compassion and the importance of diversity and acceptance. They have learned that everyone has something to offer and everyone can and should be challenged to reach their own personal potential. It is so very important to realize that inclusion is the end goal for all children. We all want our children to be valued members of the community once they leave the school system, regardless of their differences, and maybe even because of their differences. This community inclusion is best fostered in an inclusive classroom. While I've been happy with my son's placement, it has not been without hurdle, which have required his father and me to be strong advocates for an appropriate education for him in his least restrictive environment, as the IDEA requires. It has also required creative solutions to behavioral challenges and a willingness on the part of the IEP team to collaborate effectively. But as the president of the Down Syndrome Association of Hampton Roads, I also know parents who have been wrongfully steered in the direction of self-contained classrooms from preschool onward who come to our organization for advice and advocacy. I have come to realize that unfortunately segregated environments and self-contained classrooms have been prioritized in Virginia Beach and that there's a different attitude towards inclusion that varies by school and by principal. While my son has been welcomed at his home school despite having an ID label and no ID program in his school, I have known parents at our adjacent elementary school who have been told they do not have a classroom for children with intellectual disabilities, therefore their child must be bused 30 minutes away instead of first being offered the necessary supports needed to stay at his or her home school. In addition, some so-called inclusive schools in our city include students with disabilities only during non-academic portions of the day and not in a very interactive manner. I would like to suggest that VBCPS make a systemic change by focusing on setting high expectations for students, all students, and by truly committing to providing all of the necessary supports to every student at every school. In order to do this, VBCPS needs to have a strong vision that fosters, encourages, and prioritizes inclusion. This vision needs to be consistent throughout the city without exceptions. In closing, there is simply no substitute for building an inclusive community within the school system. Schools are the building blocks of our community, and what are we teaching our children if some members of our society are viewed as not welcome and not worthy of contributing? Thank you for your time, service, and attention.
For your input. Appreciate that.